Because there was just a little girl in me saying, I need more. I need more nourishment. I'm hurting here. Help me. Just help me, please, because I can't do this to myself anymore. And I saw the me looking at me. I saw kind of like the little Sophie looking over the other Sophie, but the pure child, the intuitive child who knew that I didn't have to do this to myself in order to feel better.
Welcome to the Dealing with Feelings webcast. Today, I spoke with Sophie Grégoire Trudeau. Sophie is an author of Closer Together and an emotional literacy, equality, and mental health advocate. We spoke about so many things: Sophie's own mental health challenges, being a mom and the wife of Canada's Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, and we spoke about Sophie, the mental health advocate and yoga teacher. I just love the conversation. I learned a ton and hope you will too. Here we go. Welcome, Sophie.
Thank you. It's great to feel welcomed. Thank you.
I got up early this morning. I read your entire book, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm excited to talk with you about you and your thinking about mental health and emotional literacy and well-being. And so let's just start off by asking the simple question, which is, how are you feeling right now? Just what are you feeling in this moment as we begin this conversation?
Gratitude. I'm feeling grateful. I'm feeling grateful that we're here together. It's a mix of that and a little bit of overwhelmingness as well. Yeah, I think most people feel overwhelmed. I think that we try to juggle so many balls at the same time and multitask. When's the last time you were actually doing one task and thinking about just that one task? I find that I've been trying to get my mind, more focused as I'm coming out with this new book and it's so busy, and the 3 kids and life and restructuring my relationship. And it's dizzying. And I'm glad that at 49 years old, I finally have the tools and the knowledge and the discipline that I've developed to know how to bring myself back into balance. And by the way, I haven't figured everything out. Some days are better than others. And life is a beautiful chaos. And if we can manage to be able to sit with our pain without feeling overwhelmed, I think there is a path to, I would say, true freedom, not happiness, because we're obsessed with happiness. And what does it really mean to be happy? For me, it's not a destination. It's a process of just being conscious. But to be conscious is also to have a sense of responsibility for who we are. So this is why I wrote the book, for us to have a better idea of how we actually work from a neurobiological imperative, which is universal. We all share the human brain, and we all have a vagus nerve and a nervous system. So it's quite humble as a lesson, because it reminds us that nothing can separate us or divide us that is greater than what binds us. But unfortunately, we let our minds and our egos take the course, and then we get all confused. And
yeah, that's a lot you just shared, by the way.
Sorry. I'm just a little bit passionate about the topic.
Yeah, just a little. I want to start off with a second question, which is for the last 30 years, that's how long I've been in academia. There's been so much around the things that you're bringing up, talking about the nervous system, talking about emotional intelligence, talking about the strategies to deal with your feelings, hence the name of this webcast, which is Dealing with Feelings. But yet, as we know, Canada, I think, is doing a little bit better than the United States, but the mental health of our nation, of children, of adults, has plummeted. And I'm just curious, what are your thoughts about why are we at this place right now?
I don't think there's one factor. It's a factors all put together. First of all, there has been a kind of weaponization of loneliness and people's fears and insecurities. And the child brain from 0 to 6 is in a experience expectant mode, meaning children can learn languages super easily. They fall down, they get back up. So the low risk, low cost of experiencing life and being independent ensures that when they grow older, they won't be new to that situation of risking and taking and falling and getting back up. But because of technology and because of human isolation, and the pandemic obviously hit us so hard, but because our obsession with fame and comparison and competition and success as a form of recognition instead of contribution, the degradation of community, of the fact that we belong to each other, and the fact that we can't age either. Aging is an insult now. So what exactly do young people have to look up to if you add to that all the world crises that we're facing? What is it? What have we created? And now that the brain is getting more and more information, we're bombarded with information every day, not only are we overwhelmed by it, but we're so thirsty for authenticity and wisdom. But what does this mean in a society that always is encouraging distraction, lust, rage, highs? And, we get bored of something or a relationship, we swipe or whatever it is. Then when we're addicted to that, the hormones that are meant to be calming are boring to us. And that's quite a pickle, because that's how a lot of young teenage brains are dealing with all of this. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the science and the research, it's showing us that we're actually impairing the development of the brain in childhood when we separate human beings, when there's social isolation, and when there's, I would say, very low emotional awareness in a way. Mm-hmm. So when the work that you do, Marc, and the love that you bring into the whole process is not just because you went through a lot and you have the knowledge to share it with others. It's because you're a peacemaker somewhere. You want to bring goodness into the world, and you want people to feel the same way. I'm the same too. I'm an only child. And for me, I'm 49, and I still kind of want to ask you, hey, I'm Sophie, do you want to play? To have that connection. And to wrap this up, I think that the lack of connection, and research shows us this, that the lack of connection is at the root of so much human trauma and pain. Mm-hmm. But relationships and connection are the healing agents to trauma. So there's two sides to the medal, and it's hopeful.
So you're basically asserting that we have de-emphasized connection, and that we've got to figure out as a society, the means to help people be closer together. No pun intended.
Exactly. But what was I reading recently? That when we're in contact with nature, and I'm a nature enthusiast. I was lucky that I was born from zero to 4, like in the forest, and my father brought me out everywhere and would push me down the hill skiing. And he really made me test my physical limits, therefore my psychological capabilities as well as a child. And it served me my whole life. But being in contact with nature, which is happening less and less for our children and most humans, especially in modernized society and North America, is that we kind of get out of tune of our own biorhythms, and we're out of tune with the rhythm of nature as well. And when we feel that there's something greater than us, when you sit under a large tree, or when you look at the ocean, or a beautiful sunset or sunrise or a starlit sky, some people describe it as there's a feeling of awe. There's a feeling that there's something greater that unites us all. Well, apparently that when you have that feeling of awe, it also means that you feel more connected to others. You are more susceptible to be altruistic. And the ego is in a healthy place, mm-hmm. because it is less obsessed with its own rewarding systems constantly. So spending time in nature is actually a way of fostering inner peace. And it's not surprising when you think about it, because that's where we come from. We just stopped living in nature, hundreds of years ago. More than that, but yeah.
Actually, a friend of mine is one of the lead researchers at Decker Keltner at UC Berkeley on taking awe walks, just literally go on an awe walk.
And it doesn't take an hour a day. This is what we have to remind ourselves. Just micro habits, even if it's 10 minutes in the fresh air, or taking the stairs to go somewhere outdoors, or getting out on a patio, or going to the park. It doesn't have to be complicated. And the baby steps that we incorporate in our lives, sometimes they become traits, right? When we emphasize, and when we're disciplined, and when we repeat them. So the body responds in a beautiful way, and I've lived that by experience, Whether you're depleted, tired, nervous, depressed, being out in fresh air always helps. Always.
So two things that we've talked about already. The first is just relationship piece. Meaning being with people and in-person contact and then the second is just nature, being a strategy. My bigger question for you now is, most of us who are in the mental health space, whether it's as a scientist or and someone who does a lot of advocacy work, writers, you don't just do it because you're interested in it. You do it because there's a core in you. My story is I had a horrific childhood with abuse and bullying, and I just, was very fortunate that I had someone in my life to help me come out of that, who gave me purpose and passion. And so I really want to know, when did the light bulb go off in Sophie's head saying, my focus is going to be on mental health?
I don't think it was ever a light bulb, Mark. I think I lived it. So it gave me direction in my life without me even knowing it. I remember as an only child, and I've had a very unique life path, including the one on the political path a couple of years ago. And I've met kings and queens and people with very important titles and positions. And I've met people who have none. And the lesson is that, wow, we're really all the same in our emotional needs. It just differs on what kind of experiences we had and, how we had, a calming life in the womb and how our caregiver and parent took care of us and all of that. But I remember as a child feeling a mix of deep awe of life, curiosity, and a beautiful solitude. So I'm an only child, so I was always alone most of the time. I had friends, but we lived out in the countryside, so it was, a little bit more secluded. And I remember being surrounded by adults, so having to, be very aware emotionally to be able to meet them there. And there was a mix of solitude, which is an incredible experience because you learn how to sit with silence. I was in nature all the time, so it was kind of a natural way for me of being. But I also felt a deep loneliness. That's different. People who have been isolated during the pandemic, who know aging parents who are left alone by themselves, or, people know what we're talking about here. And there's a difference between solitude and loneliness. But I remember feeling that my parents, had a difficult relationship. And I know very well that unconsciously, I was trying to save my mother from my dad and save my dad from himself. And that's a lot to carry emotionally for a young child. And I kind of always said, well, I got out of it fine and it is what it is. Until I started to really study more of, mental health issues and bonds of attachment and the neurobiology of the brain and all that. And then I realized I was talking with a specialist, Gabor Mate, and I realized, okay, wait a second. It was some form of chronic stress on an emotional perspective. And as I grew in age, I always wanted to please, right? We're born with those two needs for attachment. So being under somebody's care, just to be taken care of, is our survival. Every baby needs it. But also authenticity, being able to express who we are without having to change our behavior to please. But we all do it because we all want to be loved and understood. So we try to please and change a little bit who we are. And we lack that true authenticity. And we learned that from a very young age. And I remember really wanting to please my parents, especially my dad. And I knew he loved me. But there was always a little voice in my head, I gotta be perfect. I internalized my parents' relationships and the pressure that I was receiving and also holding to be perfect. And I felt like I couldn't control much in my life. I was an only child, so I was pretty much told, where to go, what to do. But because they gave me the independence of play in nature, I kind of had both worlds. And as I grew into the teenage years, I was never really rebellious. I I mean, with boys, yes. But not to a point where I was putting either my health at risk or, my security at risk. I had a good compass for that. At parties, I was the first one to set the party up and, get it going. But I was the first one to leave because I was seeing so many people get drunk until they were like to the floor. And girls like faint, like losing consciousness. And I was like, oh my God, that can't be me. That can't be me. And trying to be perfect built up so much tension inside of me, and me wanting to have more control over my life, I developed an eating disorder. And I would control it just started with dieting, controlling my weight. I was always thin, but my mom was like stick thin. And, in our sick society and our notion of beauty and thinness, I internalized that as well. But it's a form of self-betrayal. So you're telling yourself you can't look like you really are without forcing anything or controlling everything around you. And you can't really act the way you really want to, because if you're too much of a prude, you're boring. But if you're too promiscuous, they're going to call you the W or the S word. So I grew up with very paradoxical messages of my dad telling me, go out there, conquer, go, don't be afraid, always be courageous. You got everything in you. And then him making comments with his friends on how another woman looked, or, I've heard some from family and from friends, some quite degrading comments for a long time in my life in regards to women. And it made me angry. And I internalized that anger because I didn't want to be angry at my parents, because that would mean I wouldn't be perfect anymore. So I kind of became angry at me, and I was in a self-betrayal mode. And controlling the food was also a way of filling the emotional void that I felt. Filling the sense of a bit of emptiness. And as I became a young woman, my father became emotionally distant. Today, I understand he was struggling with his own stuff, as everybody is. But he never faced his trauma like our generation has. And I think we're cycle breakers, luckily. Our parents and grandparents had less tools than us, and so much more stigma, and still today, around mental health issues. So I suffered for years, Mark, years. And I knew exactly what I was suffering from. I had read upon it. I was good at school. I was like, what the heck is going on? What is this? And I was talking with a lot of girls. I love to communicate. I love humans. So we were talking about it. And I wasn't saying what I was doing, but they could see something was off, and I was losing weight. So I was bulimic. I lost weight. I was almost anorexic, but I wasn't. And the bulimic episodes started off like here and there. I ate too much, and I couldn't. The sense of eating too much was kind of like a high, because I could take it whatever I wanted. It was filling me up. Finally, I could control what I needed, what I longed for so much. And then I felt completely ashamed and full in my belly. And also like I had to continue to control it, but to not gain weight. So the purging came along. Now, I remember it started slowly, and then it escalated, and then it came in waves. And every time I would tell myself, come on, this is the last time. You can't do this to yourself. And I would hide, and I would weigh myself constantly. And I would find a bathroom at the end of the, school building where nobody could find me at lunchtime to get rid of the food. And in there I saw a pair of feet in another stall beside me. And when I went to that bathroom, I would actually see them often. And I was like, what's going on? Why is this person like staying for so long in there? Maybe she was asking herself the same question about me. And then I realized at some point she came out many months later, and she was eating her lunch in there by herself. And that was a moment for me where I said to myself, I'm going to have to do something when I get out of this. And I just wanted to just get out of it. But just like with alcohol, sex addiction, money, whatever your addiction is, you can't just snap and say, okay, I'm out of it. There's an addiction process. and the brain and the body. So you got to wean yourself. You got to go through the process and understand your trauma and know how to feed it in another way. Feed it in a good way, not in another way, in a good way. And one night, many years later, as I was in bed, I had purged too much and I was trembling. And I was crying like uncontrollably. And I was overcome with sadness and loneliness and shame. And I had a tiny bedroom. It was about, 8 feet by 8 feet. Like it was tiny, tiny, tiny. Only my little bed fit in there. But I loved my bedroom. And I was all cuddled up in there thinking, how do I get out of this? How do I get out of this? And I'll always remember, I can go back there right now. It was dark. I could see the light in the hallway where my mom was like doing her nightly routine with her creams and stuff, because we shared the bathroom upstairs. And I screamed her name. I said, Mama. And just when I say it now, I'm re-triggered, because there was just a little girl in me saying, I need more. I need more nourishment. I'm hurting here. Help me. Just help me, please, because I can't do this to myself anymore. And I saw the me looking at me. I saw kind of like the little Sophie looking over the other Sophie, but the pure child, the intuitive child who knew that I didn't have to do this to myself in order to feel better. It wasn't the way. So my mom recognized my problem as soon as she reacted, which was incredible. And at the same time, I was freaking angry because I was like, but I didn't tell her that, obviously, right? I was like, how come she didn't notice?
Right.
If she had noticed I was losing weight, why didn't she react more? But she was struggling on her own with her own stuff again. So from that point on, I think my life took a turn and a direction where I had clarity that not only did I have to heal, but I knew deep inside me that I had to help others heal along the way. I just knew it. It was just in me. I think it might be the only child and the lonely child, right? That I didn't want to leave people suffering like that. So yeah, and then I started my healing path.
And that's been how, if you don't mind sharing, I'm curious, how is your relationship now with food, with eating?
It's about how my relationship is to myself. That's what changed. So much more compassion and tenderness towards myself. So much more congruent identity, a feeling that I have made decisions in the past years as a woman, as a mother, that have been the most difficult, but that have been the most filled with integrity. And that has given me a sense that my own strength and power do not depend anymore, or as much as I thought before, on what the world thinks of me. And my life has been all over the newspaper throughout the world, my private life. And it's insane when I think about it. I'm like, why is it even interesting? Like, what? But it also tells a lot about the voyeurism and the curiosity of other people's tribulations and struggles in a way that is so unhealthy. And yeah, I just feel like I've developed an inner freedom that allows me to feel like I'm free, not from the world, but in the world. Yeah, that I don't have to ignore or exclude myself from the world in order to feel a part of it.
Yeah. So
does that make sense?
It does, but I want to get really specific now, because obviously you have had for many years a big life, right? Public life, like you were just sharing, everything you say and do is in the newspapers. That's got to be triggering. And so what are your go-to strategies for dealing with that? Like when you see something that you can't, Like, I can't believe this happened. What, you have children. How do you deal with it?
So first of all, I'm much less reactive to it than I used to be. At the beginning, when you're in politics and people, they bash you and your family every day, whether you do something right, whether you do something wrong, you can never please people. Well, most people. But at the same time, when you hear stuff like that in the media, and when you're attacked personally and the people you love and your personal security is at risk, yes, it does instill chronic stress. And now I understand from meeting first ladies from across the world in different kind of cultures that I remember at a summit once with Jill Biden, we were talking with many first ladies, and we were getting very, more, I would say, profound in the discussions when it came to mental health. And I asked all of them around the table at lunch, how are you all sleeping? And all of them were like, yeah, no, forget that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of us were perimenopausal. But so many of us were in situations where our loved one, personal security, psychological security in a way as well, right?
Well, psychological safety
is at
for
risk,
sure.
Right? And we know now that you can have food on the table, you can have all the objects surrounding you that you love, you can have a roof over your head, but if safety is not there, game over.
Mm-hmm.
So when we try to judge other people's suffering because we think they have it all, we have to go back to how we're built in our human bodies,
Mm-hmm.
because it doesn't mean anything at all. And right now we're going to exclude all the extreme sources and conflicts in the world. This is not what we're comparing with at all. But we should be very careful of how we judge each other's suffering, because at the end of the day, we're one trauma away from each other. It takes one dramatic life event or a series of chronic stresses to change your brain, change the way you perceive yourself, and change the way you interact with the world.
So let's go back to your strategies. You feeling that stress, sleep obviously is a big one, but I'm very curious about, your brain. I want to know your cognitive strategies. Like, what are the things that you say to yourself? Do you have a board of advisors, like do you have a few friends?
I love that. I do not have a board of advisors, but Mark, one day I would love to have you on that board. I have an incredible social circle. And I think that through the years, it has saved me in so many ways, whether it's the women or men around me. I've been so lucky to be well surrounded. And that's how I think you choose your friends.
Well, that's your board. That's what I mean by your board. I mean, you have key friends, that you feel safe with, that you can talk to about these things.
Absolutely. But that being said, I felt safe, but I also was in a position where complaining was out of the question. You understand that? Because apparently I was living in a mansion, and there are no troubles when you live in an official residence. Mm-hmm. Because we're not humans, right? We're machines.
Right.
So I had to be very careful what I said and who I talked to. It is not in my nature to be doubtful of the other.
Right.
And the most unhappy human beings are the ones who can't trust in other human beings. And so it was counterintuitive and in a way anti-authentic for me to try to stay within my shell in a way. So my strategies through the years have been really leading into my close friends. I did therapy as well. I like to call it guidance, exercise, cardio, stretching, breathing, being outdoors, savior, because that affects your sleep cycle, and your sleep cycle affects how you feel during the day, and it affects your energy levels and how you want to exercise or not. So when I don't have a good night's sleep, which happens, and my sleep has been disturbed since my 40s, and this, by the way, is also an epidemic in itself. The sleep disturbances and the insomnia on this planet is it's rampant. And it affects a lot of women as well. And I remember when I don't sleep well, I know very well that I won't have the same energy levels to share, give, focus, discern, and feel safe because I'm depleted and I'm tired. We are raised in a society that tells us the opposite. Perform, outperform, compete, and in a way create success that is accumulation of wealth and of objects.
You'll appreciate, let me just appreciate this. So I did a study with students at my university and teaching them breathing exercises and mindfulness. And they were undergraduates. They got paid to participate because we had a grant to do the research and we're trying to track them over the course of 8 weeks. About 70% of the students dropped out. And when I interviewed them afterwards, what they said was that they didn't think it was valuable, right? Because like, why am I going to spend time breathing when I could be spending time reading and writing and getting better grades? They could not make the connection to the breath work, to the mindfulness work, and their success.
It's not their fault. It's not their fault. We were not educated on this stuff. We don't teach it as we teach geography, mathematics, and languages in schools to young people. And, there's an old wise saying, I think it's indigenous or Cherry, I'm not sure. And it says, in the end, we will conserve what we love what we understand, and understand what we have been taught. So how can we even begin to love ourselves if we don't know ourselves? And what you're trying to do is teach people how to know themselves.
And introspection is like a bad word.
It's changing slowly, but breathing is the one thing that we all do, right, as human beings, and it happens by itself. But I think it's one of the only involuntary functions of the body that we can actually control.
Right. Yes, that's correct.
So that's a miracle in itself. Since I started practicing, I can lower my heart rate, and that's to go back to practices again. I know how to breathe now, so I can lower my heart rate. And if I have palpitations, which I've had before, I know how to be more patient and not go into fear mode and thinking I'm dying. No, you're not. This will pass. You'll be okay. Reparenting myself in a way. And this is not to point the finger at parents and saying you did such a bad job.
Let's go back to your strategies, because that's where so I'm hearing a lot of strategies. You're doing, obviously, the breath work, you're doing yoga, you're getting out in nature, you're doing other physical activities, social connection. But I really want to know, like, when you are like, I can't believe this is happening, or like my children, or whatever it is, they're making fun of you. Where does your brain go in terms of the self-compassion or I'm just curious, where do you go?
I go everywhere. I'm a human being. I don't have it all together. But I know that when I feel all over the place, that there is a way to come back and calm my mind. And again, it's like I go back to the little Sophie in me. We all have a little person that is the true us inside of ourselves. And I talk to her. I'm the child and the adult at the same time. I'm the caregiver to myself. I hold myself. When you want to reset your nervous system, there's an exercise that you actually hold yourself for like at least a minute or two, and you close your eyes and you just hug yourself as if somebody else was hugging you. I learned through writing the book that sexual touch is not necessary to feel emotionally fulfilled, but human touch, yes. Just normal kind of like friendly, warm, compassionate touch. So I've learned techniques like that to just think of a beautiful moment that I've lived and to immerse myself in it all over again. That's savoring. How to reset my nervous system is through the vagus nerve, which is the longest cranial nerve in the body that runs from the brainstem down into the throat and the chest and, down into the abdomen. And it regulates so many functions in our human body. We all have one, and we can all intervene. And if we taught that in schools at a young age, people would have more resilience because stress is fine. It comes with life. But the rhythm at which it remains in our lives So always, we're not supposed to be in stress all the time. Supposed to be under stressful conditions some of the time. And that activates our autonomic nervous system from the sympathetic, fight, flight, freeze, into the parasympathetic, rest and digest. But when we get stuck in that parasympathetic system, always in alert mode and danger, and have to react and in survival mode in a way, most people in the population, apparently near half, are stuck in that system. So what does that say? It means that when you are in that fearful mode, right, which comes from our primitive brain that there's a saber-toothed tiger going to attack our tribe, we distrust others. We have difficulty feeling compassion and empathy. And it's not our fault. This is not about blaming, but it's seeing the truth for what it is. So when you've got a big majority of the population in that mode, it means that we have to build structures and environments, families that make people feel safer.
What I'm hearing, though, interestingly for you, is that regulation or self-management is a lot of physical stuff. It just feels like you just seem like you are someone, you like the movement, you like breathing, you like being in nature, you like talking with people. Like that just seems like your kind of like primary source of managing difficult feelings.
I would add to that, getting in the middle of the negative thought pattern. So you know that frontal striatal loop, it's a place inside your brain where when the gerbil starts running.
I know it too well.
We all know it too well. And the gerbil starts running and then you're like, oh my God, how do I stop this? But when you actually acknowledge that you're in that loop and you know it, already there's a switch. Already the brain has discernment it's like witnessing what is happening. And that's a form of, I would say, it's a form of self-awareness and wisdom.
So if you're going through that cycle, whatever it is, like you're having some negative thoughts, whether it could be about anything, you catch it. And then where do you go?
Sometimes I'll say, so I'll catch myself doing it. And then I'll go, no, full stop. No, you are worthy more of this negative pattern thinking, and that's not you. So sometimes I'll say that, stop. No, I set a boundary within myself. And then I tenderize. I used to feel like I not perfect enough. There was kind of like a hook, like a fishing hook that would hit me in the back of the neck, like not good enough. And then I started imagining it feathery and playful, like I am, right? And it helps because it's hard to be compassionate towards ourselves.
Well, it's not. It doesn't seem to be our default. Our default, from whether it's evolution or the way we've been developed, is self-saboteur.
Exactly. And I think it's Laurie Santos who talks about the fact that our brain is not constructed to make us happy. Like after a long day's work, when you're tired and you're depleted, when you're watching TV, the brain's like, yeah. But no, what you really have to do is push it to go outside, to move, to get fresh air, or phone a friend and say, I'm not doing well, or whatever it is, I feel overwhelmed. And then the brain goes like, oh, okay, fine. And it will follow us, which is kind of fascinating because it gives us a lot of power on how we can intervene on our own well-being.
So I want to talk about, as we come to a close, a little bit more about strategy. So I think you know my work because we've talked about this, but we have this tool that we call the mood meter. And there are different feelings in each of the quadrants. And so there's different feelings. There's the yellow emotions. And so I'm really in the green and the blue and the red. So I really want people to learn from you in terms of your strategy. So when Sophie wants to feel, I know from your book that humor is, you like humor, you like to have fun. We've had fun together. I'm actually really desperately in need to laugh right now.
Well, ask me questions and then I'll make sure it happens.
But I'm just in the mood to not, I'm so, and I'm I just want to have fun. So,
well, good mischief and playfulness sends a signal of safety to the brain. So we're wired as human beings to play and to be in connection with each other for the sake of our healthy brains.
Exactly. So it's like
It's so cool.
prescribed laughter.
Natural medicine, natural high. It's perfect.
So what do you do to have, like, what brings you into that playful place? What helps you?
Everything? No, seriously. I mean, I think I'm very, first of all, like every child, we are naturally playful. And I was raised in a family where playfulness was very much encouraged, and good mischief as well, and pulling pranks on people and stuff like that. So I think it's my go-to, naturally inclined to go there and feeling safe, where when I make people laugh, it makes me so happy. I see them giggle, like my kids. I remember once I asked my daughter, she must have been, I don't know, 11. I'm like, who's your funniest friend? And we're in the kitchen and she turns around and she's like, you? I'm like, yes. Very soon she's going to be a teenager. She's a teenager
So
now.
you
She's
seem to
15.
like initiate it. You like to initiate it.
Yes. Yes. And you know what? Sometimes I'll be goofy. Like I'll come down the stairs and tumble like the last 3 and have my hair all over the place just to make my son laugh and he's bawling. Like stupid stuff, you know, but comedic in a way.
All right. So Sophie wants to be in the green. She's had a long day and she wants to feel calm, content, tranquil, peaceful. What do you do for that?
What do I do? Like at the end of it, I think first I relax. I'll try to do a guided yoga nidra, which I teach as well. I need the guidance too. It's not because I'm a yoga teacher and I teach, yoga nidra to others that I don't need it. I need it and I need to be guided as well. I stop blaming myself for stuff that goes wrong in my life. I take responsibility, but I don't put too much blame on myself. I just want to become a better person. Everything is of passage. Shake it off. My son plays basketball all the time. Coach says, you make a mistake, you shake it off. Because it doesn't, if you acknowledge it, then it's done, learn, continue. So that's the kind of like internal language that I'll have. And I remind myself, I spoke to a former prime minister and I asked him, what's the biggest lesson you've learned, a Canadian prime minister? And he told me that everything is of passage. And when I'm struggling, I remind myself of those emotions that I feel overwhelmingly right now. They're going to pass. It's like a wave. And I talk to myself as if I was my best parent. It's okay, my love. Sometimes I talk to myself like
That's
that.
great.
It's okay, Sachinette. I call like, it's okay, love. You'll be okay. You'll be okay. You're safe. It's going to be okay. And just when somebody tells me that, Mark, I become emotional. One hand like this, hey, I love you. It's going to be okay. Who doesn't want to hear that?
Yeah. And think about how many people don't hear it though.
Exactly. It hurts. It hurts in my heart when I think about that. It's the same thing. Not everybody can not only find nourishment in their direct environment, but they feel threatened in their direct environment. If I could, I would build a home that would allow all of them to come in, and we could build a community where everybody feels safe. And that's what you're doing. And it's what I'm doing in my own way. I do believe that as human beings, not only do we have the responsibility to become conscious of our behaviors and our way of living with ourselves and with each other, but I think we're really sitting at a turning point, pivotal moment, transformational moment in our humanity, where we want to be in connection to others. And we know that we're unwell when we're not. We're finding it out at our own detriment and at a high cost. And when you think that mental health issues are the number one cause for absenteeism at work, and, feeling alone, feeling completely unempowered, and also distrustful of governments or others, then what is the hope to live? People are in despair, and people who don't have the emotional tools within themselves and around them are cutting their life short because they can't bear the pain. We can't let that continue. And when we live in an age where we have all the technological advancement and medicine and name it, and opportunities, but we are killing ourselves at unprecedented rates. So through life's history, when agriculture came, when men started owning land, and they also started owning women within the family unit, and then women with the industrialization, men went out there and worked, and so many women were left behind. We kind of fragmented the communities, and so we fragmented the individual. And a lot of us feel like there's missing parts to our own self.
So what's your prescription? What is your hope? Like, where are the places in home, school? Is it home? Is it school? Is it workplaces? Is it all the above? Like, where do we begin?
I think it's a mix. I think we begin with baby steps. I think we stop being caustic, or no more apathy, no more taking for granted. When we look at the world stage right now, and when we look at the wars that are taking place, like when we have a roof and we have friends and food, we have everything. So, and safety. So I think that the hope resides in our capacity to go within ourselves truthfully and authentically, and our capacity to connect as human beings and tell each other our stories. Us humans, we have evolved as storytellers. And if we don't share each other's stories and personal struggles and pains and joys, then there is a lack of connection that is making us sick. And I'm very hopeful and scared as well, right? With the AI coming and where it's already there. I've met with people who own AI companies in different conferences who are saying we're programming stuff into computers and machines, and they're coming out with more stuff that we would never program in them. And the rhythm at which it's coming into our brains is so overwhelming that we're going to need to react fast. So I would say collaborative work from people from all stripes of life and all life paths and all professional silos, bringing people more together, building more community-oriented programs across countries and democracies. We used to have an amazing program, a volunteer program across Canada, and young people would go and live in other communities. Because of technology now, there could be incredible programs where we could learn from each other, sometimes in person, sometimes at a distance, just to immerse ourselves in something that is different from us without feeling threatened. When you actually face your enemy, and sometimes there's diplomacy, sometimes you can sit down, there is a shift. There is something that changes when you're face to face. Mm-hmm. And if we're face to face now on a screen, but if we were face to face in person, it would also shift mm-hmm. something. So I would say encouraging human contact in all its forms to create more proximity and less division is actually serving as the riverbed for healthy democracies. So you can imagine in countries that are not even democracies, how important that would be. Just imagine for a second if all the world leaders from all different parts of the world were well regulated, well versed in emotional literacy, being able to sit with their hard emotions without feeling threatened by the difference of the other.
Mm-hmm. Well, you actually just stole my closing, which I'm not happy about.
Oh, no.
Which is, I wanted to take you through just a little meditation and then get your response from that.
All right.
Because we've covered so much, and I'm deeply appreciative.
Me too.
So let's take a nice long inhale and just let it go. Sophie, I'm going to ask you to imagine a world where all the things that we spoke about today are a reality, where children and the adults who are raising them and teaching them and our world leaders are all emotionally intelligent. That's a priority. It's now a global priority. And it's not only a priority, it's there's action. It's kind of embedded, as I like to say, into the immune system of the world. My question for you is, what do you see being different about our world?
I'm not going to overthink this, but I have chills all over. Mother Nature is responding to us with her arms wide open and saying, I was waiting for this moment. Yeah. We're being watched and listened and unjudged by Mother Nature. She teaches us lessons of community, of solidarity, of heartache, of destruction. But life is polar opposites. And within us, we hold those polar opposites. So if we're able to swim, navigate, love, fall, get back up in this beautiful chaos, in the entropic law of the universe, there is a sense of liberation and of respect and bow towards life that is a reflection of nature in the universe. And this feeling of oneness, actually, I think is worth every second of what it means to be human.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Sophie Grégoire Trudeau. My big take-home message was the power of emotional self-awareness and connection in healing and having a life filled with purpose, productivity, and self-fulfillment. Let me know down below in the comments your thoughts about this episode. I'm particularly interested in hearing your thoughts about the power of connection. If you enjoyed today's episode, I also want to invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, share episodes with your friends and family, and follow me on social media for additional tips and strategies. I'm really glad to have you on the Dealing with Feelings journey. See you next time.